Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada, and this episode features an interview with our sponsor, Kronos, who believes that great businesses are powered by great people. On this episode, we are going to learn about two great businesses, Levi Strauss and 8 Sleep. First up, live from Paris, Diana Dimitian, Vice President and Managing Director, Southern Europe, Levi Strauss & Company, talks about the strength of the brand and operating DTC in stores in Italy, Spain, and France, leading in and during the COVID crisis. Next up, Amanda Nichols Sr Manager, Industry Marketing from Kronos, describes the strength and agility of this largely cloud-based workforce management solution, employee management trends heading into 2020, and the key essential new requirements for employees for the COVID-19 era. Finally, live from New York, Alexandra Zatarain, co-founder of 8 Sleep, introduces her innovative product, Sleep Solution brand, and DTC retail model that I first saw at Showfields in January and is sparking a movement for better sleep during troubling times. But first, let's check in with Diana from Paris. Diana, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Michael. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, you and I have something in common. We both worked, or you work, for Levi Strauss. I spent some time at Levi Strauss. I was just looking at this book I got back in 1998 from the Canadian leader. I was in this whole project called Customer Intimacy, and you and I were talking about that when we first met here in Toronto. So you and I have something in common. We've known each other for a while. You've gone on to great adventures, so I'm keen to hear all about that. For my listeners that don't know you as well as I do, so to speak, tell us a little bit about your personal, your professional journey, your role now at Levi's. And of course, we all know the brand, but tell us a little bit about the business itself, you know, the DTC, your store. So give us an overview.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for reaching out, Michael. And I recall you telling me about your experience working with Levi's, and obviously an iconic brand. It was a dream of mine to start working with Levi's in 2015, having worn the product and grown up in the product. So it was a real dream come true for me. I've held various commercial leadership roles, predominantly in Canada and North America, up until 2018, when Levi's offered me a position in South Europe to run their Levi's business in South Europe, which was great for me because I wanted to expand my experience in regards to the international realm. It's a multiple market, so beyond just working in Canada or in North America, it gave me the ability to work with multiple countries and markets like France, where I'm based out of. I'm based out of Paris. It allowed me to work with the Iberian market and Portugal market. And it was great because it was a fit, much like what I did for Levi's in Canada. I was working for Levi's in Canada between 2015 and the time I came here, which was second half of 2018, really wanting to take the business towards an omni platform, more digitalization, more focus on e-commerce, that physical digital landscape. I helped them launch their e-commerce business in Canada and expand direct to consumer in Canada, and it was really apropos to the assignment in regards to coming here. We've got a great fleet of stores in South Europe. We've got a significant amount of wholesale business as well. Developed businesses predominantly in France and Iberia. I think it's just been a great experience for me in regards to the journey. A little bit challenging because I moved during a time where in Q4 of 2018 we had the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest incidences in Paris, and Paris being so significant in regards to sales overall in France. That was quite a challenging environment to walk into, and it lasted for several months in regards to the first half of 2019. And then it's just like the challenges didn't stop. We had the pension strikes with the demonstrations and the pension strikes second half, and Spain and I think experienced 4 elections in within 18 months. And then Michael, I got the gift of COVID.
I was going to say, like the mother of all disruptions. Congratulations.
Yeah, the mother of all disruptions that hit Europe first in Italy, and I'm in charge of Italy as part of my marketplace. So it's been a bag of fun, to be honest with you. One challenge challenge after another. But I think, it was almost like those pension strikes and the Catalan issues and the election issues just kind of, I guess, kind of prepared the team for and the Levi's company, at least in the South, kind of for what COVID was, because during the pension strikes in particular, it allowed us to train our teams how to work from home, because our head office in South Europe is right off the Champs-Élysées, where it was a focus area for several months in regards to those strikes, some of which evolved from just Saturdays to weekdays. So we were kind of well trained in that from a French team and a South Cluster team perspective to revert to work from home. So we were all set up for this, when the COVID hit in March. So.
It's interesting because I was speaking yesterday, interviewing the CEO of a company in Australia called Bunnings, which is like a Home Depot home improvement, and of course they had the 1-2 punch of the wildfires or brush fires as they called them, and as you said, it had built both operating procedures practically, but also resilience in the organization that they had faced many challenges to their business model and to the climate, and had risen to that challenge, and now, not a challenge of the order of magnitude that we're all going through today, but, that it had built some, organizational and personal and structural resilience, and we're ready to kind of take on unusual tasks. Well, it's a good segue. So catch us up on the current events. So you cover a broad swath of Southern Europe. Obviously, we've been reading in the paper the events in Spain and Italy. Tell us, what's the status of the stores and your DTC? Are you seeing, e-commerce? Here we're seeing e-commerce growing. Of course, it can't make up for the physical stores being closed, but it's of course helpful. But what's the kind of the state of your nation, so to speak?
Yeah, well, after a period of staggered closures, right? It started in Italy, and obviously there was lockdown and confinement. It spread to Spain rather rapidly, and then France was a fast follow. We're now in the chapter of reopenings. The government May 11th has allowed some deconfinement in France. That has also evolved in regards to the north of Spain, as well as some markets even in Portugal. And government is easing up on in Italy starting May 18th in regards to openings. It's mostly size related. If you've been following, Michael, the Germany and Austria evolution,
very closely actually, because a lot of retailers in Canada and North America are less interested because it's so different in what's happening in China, because it's just such a different place. But Germany is a very interesting model for us to watch. So interesting to hear your feedback as well. Yes, please. Sorry.
Yeah,
continue.
No, absolutely. So it's just the same thing as Germany. It's certain square footage that's opening first in regards to the deconfinement phase.
That was 800 meters, I think, was it? Like it was a specific size, right?
Yeah, it was a specific size initially, and I believe it's even evolved in Germany. And in France, it's 40,000 meters squared, so it's quite large in regards to some of the formats that are allowed to open. And so it is a kind of a staggered approach in regards to deconfinement. In some cases, even today in France, we received more guidances in regards to some of what will evolve in regards to the end of the month. Larger formatted stores, I believe, based on just some of the announcements, may be opening up in Spain end of May. And it's if you've been following what's been going on in Germany, it's almost like it is different than China, right? You have got, I think, the Europeans and how they're reacting to this. Many, a lot of those images, you've been getting off the media. I'm seeing it myself now in Paris, even this week, in regards to, people getting out, people shopping. I think there's an element here of the confinement and, potentially an appetite from the consumer, less fear. And I think, this is one of those things where I'm really curious to watch Italy, because it was significantly impacted very early on in the pandemic with Europe, to see how they react and the consumers react initially. But, people are looking, I think, from a consumer standpoint to get out, and there's going to be variances, I think, contingent on the country and the marketplace. And it's not necessarily going to be the same as maybe some of the tendencies we've been seeing out of China. But I think it is a staggered deconfinement approach. I think, based on some of the, local things that I'm seeing emerging in France and Spain in particular, it's really being guided in regards to what the authorities of a local community or municipality is comfortable with. So I'm getting notifications even today in regards to some locations in France that were a go earlier in the week that aren't a go today, and with delays all the way through till July. So,
wow.
So it's interesting to see this evolve.
I've heard it described as the hammer and the dance. The hammer is the quarantine, and the dance is in and out, adjusting as events unravel and as infections go up, down, or sideways. Right? It's very dynamic, right? As you're describing, not to the country level, but even smaller, like from an operating perspective. You can't say this is the. It sounds like this isn't the scripture for any one country. You really get very local very quickly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that whole hammer and dance, that particular article and what it was relaying is I think what's transpiring now in regards to some of the early phases of the recovery, at least from an retail opening or a deconfinement standpoint. And I think it's just kind of testing the agility piece of it, right? From an operational and an organizational level. And I think we're demonstrating it right now. We're in the juice of it. It's a lot of communication, and a lot of rigor in regards to the follow through. But I think it is going to be interesting to watch the nuances, and absolutely online activity has seen a surge. I think, it was again different than China when you did, kind of read about the first few weeks of the China experience, and we obviously got a lot of literature in regards to different external data points on what happened in China. Trying to navigate this through in regards to the plan persist and prevail out of COVID for Europe, and different in regards to even the online, because from anything that I've seen in the marketplace and speaking to some external partners, it's the rebound in online in regards to certain segments was a little bit more buoyant than what we were reading on the Chinese level. So they
were already significantly ahead, but the lockdown was much tighter, right? So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is something to say that, Michael, we were chatting before about it. I think it is something interesting in regards to how things have had to accelerate from an online perspective and a digitalization perspective. Movements and shifts that are I think are going to have to happen organically now because of the pandemic. And I think there's even early signs of that in regards to online.
Interesting. Now, I'm aware, and probably more than most, about Levi's long history of being an important part of the community. I mean, that goes right back to the founders of the company, and I know it's a big part of the culture. And everything from sustainability, that's a big fiber, so to speak, or part of the fabric of the brand. How are you seeing that play out in your world and across the world from Levi's around and during the COVID crisis?
Yeah, I think from a sustainability standpoint, as you're aware, Michael, the company's been on that journey for a very, very long time in regards to manufacturing, sourcing practices. when I think about, we've had goals that we had established in 2011, further accelerated in regards to Chip Berg and his commencement in regards to his CEO journey in 2012. And the company has, I think, saved up to 3.5 billion liters of water
Wow.
because of, sourcing and manufacturing practices in how we manufacture jeans. Obviously, jeans are a lot of are wasteful in regards to water, but new practices and new methods in regards to what we call future-led execution, as well as other practices in regards to how we source the materials, has led to that achievement. And it's beyond just that in regards to sustainability. I think even very recently in December, we actually had a big event in regards to an event in Barcelona where the entire conference, hundreds of people, hundreds of partners, and the entire meeting was held through a lens of sustainability. So the build out of the conference, for everything from food, everything in regards to even a market that was, based on Levi's vintage being sold and repurposed Levi's being sold to the attendees. I think it's a part of what we do in many facets, whether it's our manufacturing facets or even how we're conducting meetings now, but a major commitment in regards to sustainability from the company. And I think the beauty about Levi's and something that hasn't changed, Michael, since your chapter with the company is we really do open source a lot of those capabilities, share them with our competition, share them with the industry, share them with verticals. So it's really interesting having this journey in regards to Levi's and even recent conversations in regards to our COVID playbook and open sourcing that. And then recently,
supply chain issues and sourcing and strategic sourcing decisions that now may have a different context, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the share out of those best practices, like we obviously have a major emphasis in regards to community now. I think every company, every major company is thinking about what they can do in their communities. And for us, it was a focus on that in regards to through a lens of employees and the employee population. And I think when I think about that, this is the first company I've worked for that has a foundation that is associative to giving back to employees, the Red Tap Foundation, and we've very recently outsourced that in regards to sharing how we establish that foundation, how we manage that foundation, how we fund that foundation to other companies during this chapter of crisis. We even open sourced that in regards to a playbook. So I think it's part of the things that the company does that makes it a little bit different.
It's part of the DNA. There's no question. I mean, I wasn't with Levi's long, but it left a lasting impression, which I guess kind of heralds in my mind and for everybody. I didn't spend a long time there, but it left, as I said, a lasting impression that it was really part of the DNA. It wasn't something you were picking up on that was kind of a trend. It was, it was a leader long before Levi's was a leader long before other people started really incorporating it into their DNA. We've talked a couple of times about consumer habits and changes in customer behavior. How are you looking at that from an operational perspective? As you start to open and run stores, we love experience in stores. I was in both of your New York stores in January, the Times Square store and the one in the Meatpacking District, and there's custom work going on, and they're just a great experience store from vintage and high touch and change rooms. And how do you conceptualize now what that looks like in let's call it the COVID era, because this is going to be with us one way, shape, or form for a little while, probably until there's a vaccine, not at this intensity, but it's going to be with us a while. How are you thinking through from an operational perspective in the physical stores? And then we can talk about online, but how are you thinking that through today?
I think you mentioned it, Michael, and I think it's an emphasis as it was pre-COVID, and maybe even enhanced now post-COVID, is the experience. Because as consumers have been in confinement and have had no choice but to shop online or browse online, and as they've gained that ability to do so for every need, inclusive of maybe categories that were less explored before, the physical store experience has to now augment and have a different place. I think also that whole digital physical association and evolution in regards to the digitalization is going to be very, very key. I think it is an acceleration in regards to that physical digital aspects of what has to transpire. And I really, even, kind of like walking Champs-Élysées this week and seeing the shopping bags, I really don't think the physical will go away. I think it'll just have to marry differently with the online, and I think that's the aspect of the evolution that's going to be even more interesting post COVID. And I think really facilitating things for the consumer. I think, and always focusing on the consumer at the center is going to be critical. But I still believe that there's going to be an aspect of experience and the human interaction, I think, is still going to be very, very relevant. And I think it's
well,
those new.
It's a great point, because of course you and I both know shopping isn't about a transaction. It can be. I mean, you need dog food delivered to your doorstep. Maybe you get that as a replenishment, but it's cultural, it's social, it's something we do together, right? It's more than just efficiency. It's there's an experience element to it that's so important, particularly for a brand like Levi's, which is about experience, right? The brand reflects the experiences of your lives and in meaningful ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something, center of culture. Part of the resurgence of Levi's since 2012-13 has been, a Live in Levi's campaign that, was really the centerpiece of that Live in Levi's campaign, and brand strategy was about being in the center of culture. And it was about, the Levi Stadium in San Francisco. It was about, moments about Super Bowl 50 and that moment in San Francisco, and Beyonce on that stage. And then the political moment of, Justin Trudeau signing to be prime minister, and he signed in his Levi's. And that was another moment, right? A center of culture moment. And I think now with this crisis, we converted to much more on a digital landscape. And social media, and going intimately with artists in their homes, and having moments in regards to these personal sessions of music, and now I think now it's going to be about, you're right, it's going to evolve more to maybe personalization, enhanced personalization, and aspects
one to one. It's one of the things I thought, and I'm curious if you thought as well. One of the things that we see a lot in China is that one-to-one consultation online and mobile phones. The live casting from an associate or a consultant to a customer. It feels like that was going to come to the Western world in years, but now it feels like it's going to come in months, if not already here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, engaging, for me, the aspect of engaging stylists and consultants that work in retail, but having them have a voice in regards to the consumer and communicating through the online platforms. I think those are the things that are going to be very relevant now, and much more relevant than maybe before. And it's going to be that personalization, that personal connection that's going to make all the difference.
Last question: you're ahead in many ways in Europe in terms of opening stores and starting to get a feel for what operating in the COVID era looks like. In Canada, many what we'd call non-essential stores are just starting to open today. Some are able to accept curbside delivery. They're not fully open yet. It's kind of a phased in. From your experience so far, What kind of 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you have for retailers back here in Canada as they begin the journey that you've already began, so to speak, which is opening stores and starting to operate once again in the COVID-19 era?
Yeah, I think health and safety first. I think this crisis has kind of enhanced that aspect of what we need to do in regards to employee populations. Beyond just health and safety materials, it's about that psychological safety in regards to the employee population, and absolutely keeping that front and center. I think from a perspective of that's a given. I think that's going to have to be very, very critical until we get into this next chapter of a vaccine or a known treatment. I think
Sure.
That employee at the center, and obviously and the consumer at the center is very, very critical in regards to this next chapter, which is the persist. I think now, we were beyond, at least in our area, beyond the planning phase of the crisis. We're in that persist moment in regards to that agility I spoke of, in regards to how to proceed. I think agility is going to be critical, and just enhanced communication. I think that's also going to be a very critical part of this, external, internal. And it's so funny. I don't know if you've heard of Dov Seidman.
No.
Michael, it's just he's somebody that our CEO brought as a speaker during a leadership summit we had earlier in the year, and he talks about the power of the human. And the power of humans in regards to how we can work together to move mountains, and the place of heart when it comes to leadership, and the heart having a lot to do with leadership. And I think he's somebody that I think of during moments like this is what I would tell
Right.
you. And I really recommend you look him up and maybe look into him, because I think this is part and parcel of the chapter I think we're in, and what'll allow us to go from plan and persist in this crisis moment to that prevail. It's going to be what we do as humans, and how we lead as humans when it comes to even our businesses.
Well, it's great advice at every level, a human level and a business and an operating level. So, thanks so much for sharing both your experience and your perspectives with us. So valuable. More so now, I think, to share globally these best practices and together, as you say, persist and prevail over this crisis. So, Diana, thanks so much for making time. It's late for you in the evening. You're in Paris, and I appreciate you taking the time to be on the Voice of Retail, and wish you and your family and your teams much safety and health and success as well.
Thank you, Michael. You as well, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
Amanda, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, it's my pleasure. Why don't we jump right in? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and about the company Kronos.
So my name is Amanda Nichols. I run industry marketing for our retail and hospitality segment. I've been at Kronos for about 3.5 years, and at Kronos we do workforce management technology. So we've got roughly 40,000 customers across 110 countries. We have a huge client base, and we have, ranging from really, really tiny retailers with a couple of hundred employees to, sort of at the top of the game, retailers with thousands and thousands of employees. So we really run the gamut. I originally came to Kronos because my background is in retail and consumer brands, but more on the consumer marketing side of it. And then the opportunity at Kronos was to really kind of flip the switch and look more at the employee base and sort of start talking to employees and sort of how we can help these big retail organizations build a great workforce management strategy and kind of tap into some of those, traditional consumer engagement strategies on the employee side, and sort of how to help them become more of an employer of choice and develop a great employee experience.
All right, right on. And I believe, are you largely cloud-based as a solution, or is there a mix? Or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're predominantly cloud-based. We still have some clients that are on-prem, but we're finding that more and more clients are much more interested in moving into the cloud. So our latest product, our flagship product, Workforce Dimensions, is 100% in the cloud. And we actually leverage the Google Cloud for that.
You talk about the workforce, and one of the big trends that we've been seeing across North America and here in Canada is foot traffic, or traffic to the stores is hard to come by. Incremental traffic is hard to drive. So I've seen retailers from coast to coast start to turn their minds to, better conversion in the store. In other words, let's focus not on driving another person into the store. Let's focus on closing that sale. And of course, pivotal to that is the employees, and that covers a lot of different things. So I wanted to start with, tell me about the macro trends that you saw and you were focusing solutions on pre-COVID. Now, pre-COVID, it feels like a long time ago. It's only 8 weeks ago. But, as you think about, as you were sitting in 2019, thinking about 2020 and forward, what were the big trends that you were seeing in your business that you were designing solutions around? And just, talking to a lot of C-level executives, what were they saying? And what were those kind of big things that were on your mind?
Yeah. So it's funny that you say pre-COVID, and that really is only a couple months ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago because so much has changed. But sort of to your point, looking back in 2019, and as we were developing our strategies for 2020, we were really focused on a couple of things. One of them, and I sort of mentioned this, is becoming an employer of choice. So unemployment has been, up until recently, has been very, very low across all of the industries that we serve, but particularly within the retail segment. So retailers really have to work hard to attract and retain the highest caliber talent that's available to them. So they've got to think about setting up their workforce management strategy in a way that really appeals to, those who are in the job market. And in a lot of cases, those people fell into one of two buckets. Either they were, the Gen Z, sort of the high school and the college kids that run most of the retail stores around us, and sort of those of that genre. And then there were those people who were really drawn to the gig economy. So, things like Uber and Lyft and, all those various companies where employees can really work whenever they want to work. Like, that's the big draw of the gig economy, is the freedom to be your own boss. And that's something that's really appealing to Gen Z as well. But one of the things that the gig economy really lacks that's very important to Gen Z is a career path. So we're working with our clients to figure out how do they provide all of the schedule flexibility and sort of like the ability for the employer to kind of really own their workday, while also providing them the career path that Gen Z is looking for. So there's a lot of different ways to do that using sort of workforce management technology. And most of that really is around schedule flexibility, empowering your employees, giving them everything that they need to manage their work life right in the palm of their hands on their device. So things like the ability to swap a shift with a coworker, to request time off, to pick up a shift last minute. Like, if you're part of Gen Z, and let's say you're 22 years old, and, you might not want to work Friday night. You might want to go out with your friends instead. So how do you give the employee the ability to quickly swap that shift with a coworker who might need the extra cash and might, be very eager to pick up an additional shift on Friday night, kind of give them that flexibility.
Right.
So
that's right in the palm of their hands, right? It kind of a BYOD, bring your own device strategy. It's so different than the past, right? I mean, it puts that enabling right into the palm of their hands. So, my friend, good friend Carl Boutet is a retail strategist, has called COVID-19 the Great Acceleration. Where we see trends that existed that have just been, like, as I've described, shot through a cannon of time. The time tunnel. So describe which of these trends that you've been thinking about have been advanced by the crisis, and then, of course, what new elements of retail and managing people are you thinking about and providing solutions for during the COVID era?
Yeah, I think schedule flexibility is definitely one of them. I mean, it's something that employees have always been asking for, but now with everything going on in COVID-19, employees need that schedule flexibility. So do employers, by the way, because as as retail shops begin to open back up, it's really hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. There's no forecast that you can turn to. There's no sort of, this happened back in, a couple of years ago when we did this. Like, we've never seen this before.
There's no playbook, right? You can't pull a playbook out of a drawer and go, okay, tomorrow the following things are going to happen, right? So such unpredictability, right?
Exactly. And like, we're all making this up as we go along. We're all working together to try to figure it out. So flexibility is certainly going to be key. But, with all the health checks that are required, with the new sort of personal protective equipment that's required, with like all the health concerns that customers have, there's this whole new element and this whole new aspect that employers have frankly never really had to deal with, and they've never really had to worry about. So one of the things that we're talking with our clients a lot about is really how to maintain health and well-being in their workforce today, because that's very different from what it was a couple of months ago. And how can they look at everything that's going on today, understand it, navigate it, and come out of it stronger and, in better position to not only navigate any potential waves that might come with COVID-19, but this is not going to be the last time the sky falls. So how can they be better prepared to manage some unknown crisis that happens into the future?
Such a good point. I mean, and speaking to retailers, their number one concern is keeping their people safe and on the front lines, and within that, kind of trying to flex what there's, as you said, the kind of unpredictability. It's state by state, sometimes city by city or municipality, what the store operations need to look like according to public health officials and their own policies and accommodations, and making sure their strategies stay safe. It's such a dynamic scheduling environment. I can't think of even a more dynamic time on top of a dynamic trend of the gig economy and flexibility. So what are you hearing from the customers in terms of their solutions they need now for the COVID era, and what have you got? What have you come up with in this cloud-based kind of move quick and be nimble kind of format?
I mean, I think there's a couple of different things. So we talk about, sort of helping our clients emerge stronger out of this through three different buckets. There's agility, and you kind of touched on that. As like regulations are changing, sort of here where I'm at, I'm located in Massachusetts, and we've just entered phase 1 of opening up. And then phase 2 is going to happen in a few weeks. And if all goes well, phase 3 is going to happen after that. And that's very different about, sort of about how Texas is handling it, how it's being handled sort of up where you guys are located up in Canada. So very similar, right? The stages and at what point do we open up? And it's different by, as I said, different by province, but directionally very, very similar on both sides of the border. Directionally, but this is the kind of thing where the devil's in the details. So if you are a retailer and your regulations might be slightly different from one location to another. Like there might be, requirements for having plexiglass shield. There might be, limitations on how many people can be within the store environment, how the lines need to be managed outside. And your employees are going to have to manage all of that. So you really need to make sure that you have the agility to sort of understand all the different regulations, requirements that are coming your way, and to manage your workforce as it comes to opening that. Like one location might be allowed to open up this week. Another location might, be required to wait a few more weeks before they can open up. So as sort of a larger corporation, you need to have your a solid handle on all of that. And then you need to make sure that you've got all the methodologies in place to working with your store managers and with your employees to get the right number of employees in at the right time. And then when that does happen, there's going to be a lot of different regulations that they're going to have to adhere to within the store environment. So there might need to be new cleaning procedures. There might need to be new policies around managing a dressing room. Like if you're a clothing retailer, there's been a lot of discussion. How do you manage the dressing room? If you try on a shirt and then the consumer doesn't buy it, what do you do with that shirt? Do you put it right back on the rack? Do you wait 24 hours? Do you have to have sanitizing, some new sanitizing methodologies around that? Whatever your policy is, you're going to need to then train your entire workforce on that policy. So you're going to need to build in, sort of different training tools and training methodologies. And then from there, you're going to need to make sure that everything you've trained your workforce on is being executed. So you need a solid task management strategy in place, whether that's sort of a methodology or whether that's a piece of technology. It's sort of up to, obviously, the individual company. But you need to make sure that you're tracking all of these tasks and making sure that they're being completed up to standard. So there's a lot that's that employers are going to have to think about when sort of coming out of this and opening up.
So it sounds like, Kronos provides this great foundation already existing around flexibility and education, but now you've layered on some new elements around these particular circumstances, right? So education was always a part, I'm sure, of the platform because you're always, informing and educating the frontline staff and then assigning them tasks. But is there any one or two things that are specifically different about, in addition to what you described, that are specifically different about the solution, touchless or, any kind of hardware or any kind of thing that comes to mind?
Totally. So that's a really good question. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about is a contact-free workforce, and we really think that's sort of where this is going. So, you mentioned sort of like touchless devices. Like you can clock in and clock out using your mobile device. You can sort of scan a badge, and then we actually have a partner that's got facial recognition technology, so you can use facial recognition to clock in and out. So you don't have to touch anything. And then there's things around, once you're within the workforce, and COVID-19 sort of, comes down and you've got to account for that, you need to be able to make sure that you're reporting and tracking properly. So you might need to add in new pay codes or something like that to make sure that you're tracking your employees who are out due to COVID-19. And then if you do have an employee that's out due to COVID-19, then chances are good that all of the other employees, or at least some of the employees who've worked a shift with them, have been exposed. So we actually launched a new tool to our customer base a couple of weeks ago. It's an employee contact tracing. So what this can do is it can look at the schedule, it can look at clock in, clock out data, and identify that everybody, whoever has worked a shift with, employee A, it can list all the other employees that employee has likely interacted with. So then you can reach out and say, hey, this employee has been exposed, go get tested, or you can decide to quarantine the whole shift, whatever makes sense to your organization. It's
really a great set of solutions, and it really highlights the ability to move fast and be agile, as you said. I think that's a theme to our conversation. If listeners want to learn a little bit more about Kronos, because this is a great conversation, but I'm sure there's a ton of depth behind it. What's the best way? Where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, definitely kronos.ca. And we also have a landing page where we put all of our content around COVID-19 on kronos.com/emergingstronger. And it's all sorts of resources on how you can sort of focus on the retail workforce and sort of come out of this better and stronger and more prepared for the future.
Well, Amanda, it's been a real treat speaking with you. It's such a vital element of retail and understanding it, and thanks for sharing. And I'm sure we can look forward to lots of changes coming. But it sounds like you're well prepared to do it. So once again, thanks for being on The Voice of Retail, and I wish you a safe week.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Alexandra, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you doing today? Everyone in your life safe? All good?
All healthy. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I have a sense of your brand, and I'll get into that a bit later. But for the listeners, tell us about yourself, your personal, professional journey, your role at 8 Sleep, and all about 8 Sleep.
Yeah, of course. So I am a co-founder and the head of marketing at 8 Sleep. I have other 2 co-founders, and we started the company around 6 years ago because Matteo, who is our CEO, and he's also my husband, struggled with sleep for many years. He was the typical overworked lawyer, then became an entrepreneur. And in those years as a young adult, he started struggling with his sleep and started just becoming fascinated by all the possibilities of what we could do with technology to help people sleep better, but that no one was actually doing yet. And that's how we started 8 Sleep 6 years ago. And that's still the premise of the company. And our mission is to use technology to unlock human potential through optimal sleep. I got to the company because I just became fascinated by the mission. When Matteo and Max asked me if I wanted to join them in this journey, I was working in New York City at a financial technology company, and it was all always in the vein of public relations and marketing, but very different from the consumer space. And when they told me about why they were building this product and what they saw in its potential, I thought, wow, this company can definitely help people sleep better, but we can even turn sleep into a real health platform and start building products that do much more for us while we are sleeping.
So tell me about the product itself. I had a glimpse of it, as I think I mentioned. I saw it at Showfields in New York. And but tell us about the product. What makes it different? What is this when you say you integrate technology and sleep?
Yeah. So what we do essentially is we've identified that there's two key things that we are able to do through technology to help people sleep better. The first is to help people understand how they sleep. And so we have integrated very seamless sensors into a mattress so that when you go to bed every night and you lie down and you spend 6 to 9 hours of every single day of your life on your bed sleeping, you're actually tracking yourself. You're tracking how you're sleeping, how your body is recovering, how you're breathing, how your heart rate is doing at rest. There's a multitude of biometrics that you can track about yourself while you are in bed. And that becomes really important because you cannot really improve what you don't measure, right? It's just like when you go on a diet. If you don't know your starting weight, then how do you know if you're actually making progress towards a goal? So it's the same thing about sleep. You need to know how you're sleeping. And it's the same thing about your health. You need to know how healthy you are. What is your heart rate variability to know if you're healthy or if you're getting sick? And this is all stuff that a lot of different wearables are offering in the market. But 8 Sleep is the only company that is doing this in a seamless way while you're sleeping.
So how does that data become insight, become action, so to speak? You know, in other words, I've learned I'm a terrible sleeper and I toss and turn too much thanks to all this analysis. But how can I actually, how do your customers and how do you actually do anything about that? How does the analytics help you get a better sleep?
Yeah, it's a great question. We get that question a lot, and we ask ourselves that question all the time too. So there's two things to it, and I really make this comparison all the time, talking about fitness versus sleep. It's the same thing with fitness, right? You could go out on the scale every day, and if you have a certain weight goal or you have a body, muscle to fat composition goal, you need to see that number. And it then really gets kind of in your hands of what do you do with that number and what sort of actions do you take? So here is where there's a little bit of that synergy between the human and the user and the technology. What the technology does with that data and what the 8 Sleep does with that data is, in aggregate, the trend analysis is where it becomes really valuable. So it's not just about that first night that you slept on your 8 Sleep pod, which is our signature smart mattress. You wake up and it tells you for the first time, you tossed and turned 13 times last night. It's probably not that valuable, right? Because you don't really know your baseline. You don't know yet if that's normal for you, if that abnormal. So it's probably when you start being on the pod for a couple of weeks and forward, when then the pod starts giving you inside the 8 Sleep app that trend analysis. So we tell you, hey, you've been tossing and turning more. Here's something you can try. Or you have been waking up more frequently in the middle of the night, or it's taking you longer to fall asleep. That is where it becomes a really powerful tool, because you're not only building this blueprint of your sleep on, for a few months and then you stop wearing it like you would do with a wearable. You are probably keeping your mattress for 5 to 10 years. And so it's building that blueprint about your sleep and your health for years. So we can detect anything that changes in your pattern and tell you something about it and recommend you what you could do as well. So over time, we've integrated a lot of those tools directly in our app, like meditation, yoga, stretching, relaxing sounds, alarms, any tool that you could need eventually to change a behavior. We are also putting them directly available in the app that comes for free with the purchase of your 8 Sleep pod.
So then you could modify a behavior. So, for example, maybe I shouldn't watch Westworld before I go to bed. It looks like I have an unsettled sleep after doing that. Or maybe I should read, and that seemed to help. So you can kind of start to, as you said, you've got a baseline, and you can start to tweak your behaviors by the sounds of what you're describing. Then, of course,
we cannot turn off the TV for you. Right? There's only so much that we can do.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. But we do actually integrate with other products that are smart home products. So for instance, for me, what works really well is that my home starts kind of getting ready for my sleep. So the lights in the living room dim down around 9:30, same for my bedroom. And it's just like small signals that your home can give you about, it's time to disconnect. Maybe it's time to leave your phone. But at the end of the day, what we really believe at 8 Sleep is that we call it sleep fitness. What you're working towards is sleep fitness. And it's never going to be just perfect and stay that way forever. You're going to have to work on it every single day. You're going to have to prioritize it, and you're going to have to measure it. And it's okay if you get a little derailed in that sleep fitness journey. You can always come back. And that's why we're here for, is to help you get back on track, to reinforce any positive behaviors, to teach you what are the right ways. But it is a journey, and you want that product and that brand that is with you along that way.
So I see the real intersection of the personal and the professional here in terms of why you developed that product. But let's talk from the business perspective. Let's talk about the category. It's seen tremendous disruption. You've been in it 6 years, and in the past 6 years, even 36 months, there's been tremendous disruption. Why did you pick that? Clearly lots of talent to go in multiple different directions, but what white space did you see? Is it this integration of technology and this longitudinal look at your sleep patterns? Is that where you saw the white space in this?
So where we see the biggest space is actually in true sleep improvement. What we saw happening in the sleep categories, there are a lot of amazing companies that are building fantastic products. A lot of them would give you great comfort, right? A lot of mattress companies, bedding, pillows, anything in that sort of direction, plushy, comfort, pressure point relief, all of these kind of buzzy words you would hear in that space. And they do that really, really well. But comfort is only one part of the equation when it comes to sleep. Then you see companies more like in the pharma space, right? They make like pills, and they promise you that they will help you sleep better, but they're actually really bad for you. They're addictive, and they don't really give you real sleep. And there's like a lot of like signs that proves they're not good, and they're not delivering on that promise. And what we saw is this space where no one is really building solutions. There are a lot of companies trying now. I think it has definitely taken off. There's a lot of companies applying technology to it, building things like what we're doing with the pod, or companies that are doing it through headbands that could give you some sort of electromagnetic stimulation to your brain. There's people really trying, which is amazing. That is what we want to see, is true technology, whether that is data or also the other key part of what we do, which is the environment adjustment, to really help people sleep better. And those are the two things that we see. Is there's the power of data that can be leveraged. Is hard. It requires change in human behavior. And there are companies doing it successfully in nutrition or in fitness. We believe we can do it in sleep. But then there's the other key part of what we do with that data that does not require changing human behavior, which is in real time creating the proper environment that will lead to optimal sleep every single night. That is a part that there is no other company really investing in other than 8 Sleep right now. And we're super, super focused, and we're obsessed by making it happen. And it's thinking about anything that can get in the way of good sleep that is coming from your environment. That may be temperature in your bed, in your bedroom, humidity, air quality, noise, even the ergonomics of the mattress, your partner snoring, and just thinking, hey, what can we do about it? What could technology do so that the moment that interruption may come through, we stop it?
Well, let's talk about go-to-market strategies, DTC brand, like yourself. What's your advice around the best way? Of course, the environment has changed in many ways during the COVID crisis, but the fundamentals probably stay the same. I know, talking to Tal from Showfields, he wanted to create a different environment for DTC brands to introduce themselves. You're not a simple pitch in terms of what your product is. It's not it's not a low price point. It needs a fair bit of explanation, as you've just been doing so eloquently. So what's your best go to market strategy? What's the best way for you, and then what's the best way, do you think, for your cohorts to really get to market?
We actually went through many iterations of how we pitched ourselves, and that was one of the biggest learnings for us. And out of our own experience, what I would tell anyone, particularly entering a market that is obviously crowded, like you said, there's a lot of companies in sleep, but entering a market with a complicated product like we do, you need to not sell your product, but sell either the end benefit or what we have focused on, which is what we're really building here is a movement. And I've spoken multiple times when I've been invited to speak at conferences or to groups of entrepreneurs about this concept of creating a movement instead of focusing on acquiring customers. And for us, it has worked really well. And the movement that we're building is this sleep fitness movement. We define this term sleep fitness. We talk about it all the time. We talk about how our products help you achieve sleep fitness. And we have found that there are people out there who are also looking to get sleep fit. And so with them, we are building this movement together. And every time that we think about the products that we create, the marketing that we do, the content that we write, we are thinking about how it's all contributing to that movement, where the end goal is that sleep fitness life, where we all want to be healthy in our sleep, where we all want to be productive. And so sleep is powering us. And that really changed the focus of all that we do, and how we introduced the latest product last year was really through that lens of let's use this new product introduction to kick off this movement. And instead of a short-term goal of just, going to market with a product, let's think about it long-term, and what does this movement look like over the next 10 years?
Yeah, right on. So the movement becomes your marketing team's North Star in terms of the strategy and tactics. That's really interesting. Let's pivot to today for a little bit. You're a bit of an experienced product, to say the least. Talk about your strategies in and around the COVID crisis, the COVID era, really, of retailing, which is it's not a short-term phenomenon. It's going to be with us for quite a while, one way, shape, or another. How are you, rethinking, if at all, your retail or brand strategy to account for the new retail business as unusual environment?
Yes, it's a big challenge. And you mentioned Showfields earlier, and we were part of Showfields for a long time, probably close to a year. And that was a really successful showroom for us because, as you mentioned, our product is a high-end product. It costs around $3,000 is an average what people spend on our website. So it's important for people to get a deep understanding of it before they buy it. The way that COVID has gotten into really kind of thrown a wrench at us right now is that we were about to expand even further on that in-person experience. And we were really thinking now how that is going to pan out. What is retail going to look like? Because particularly in our case, we're not just handing you out a sample of piece of chocolate for you to try. You kind of need to touch the bed and you need to lie down, right? And so we're even kind of one step ahead into the challenges of what social distance is going to mean for retail. People are not going to be able to just walk in and look at it and be like, yeah, I want to buy it. You need to try it for the retail experience to be really worth it for 8 Sleep. So we're adjusting. I think what was to our advantage is that we didn't have a large retail footprint. We didn't have our own stores. So all of those costs and challenges that a lot of the retailers are facing, we didn't have. Majority of our revenue was coming from our direct consumer business. And so we just are focused entirely on that. And now it's up to us to think about how we can better retail our products through an online experience. And that's a new challenge, I think, for anyone who's selling products online, is how do we make it as close as possible to the experience that people would have in person, because this effect for the in-person experience is probably going to last for a pretty long time. Yeah,
it's really amplified the challenge, right? Both how do you break through from an awareness perspective, and then how do you move down that consideration path? It's really interesting. Now, you're speaking at the upcoming Collision at Home conference. That's where I came across. I didn't come across the brand, but that's where I came across you. What are you going to be speaking about there? What's that forum going to provide for you? Is it about this sleep fitness concept, this movement that you've started?
Originally, yes, I was going to talk a little bit about that, but then given everything that we're going through right now, I decided to give it that lens of how can we build the health brands of the future. So it's more about what's next, right? I've talked for the last year a lot about the concept of movement and mission powering everything that you do. But particularly for 8 Sleep, we operate in the health and wellness space. We really are a health company. Our products that are coming up, launching soon, are going to be even more into that direction of health. Obviously, with this crisis, it's a health crisis. Consumers are very, very aware of what technology can do for their health. And so it's particularly for marketers like myself, I think an important time to rethink how are we going to build the health brands of the next 100 years. And it's probably going to require not looking back much and not shaping ourselves to what the pharma or medical or insurance companies have been doing to date. And we really want to think for ourselves, what do we want those brands and those companies to look like, to speak like, to engage with us And so that's what I'll focus on at Collision at Home.
Well, there's no question we're all thinking about our health way more than we ever did before. And I think that's going to be a lasting imprint on us all, just as major events kind of form thoughts around generation. It was a trend that was already there. And of course, we could all use a good night's sleep. Sometimes that's elusive a little bit these days. So I think you're well positioned from that perspective. How can listeners learn a little bit more about you? And then where can they find a little bit more out about 8 Sleep?
They can find us everywhere on social media and online directly at 8sleep.com, at 8sleep on all of the different platforms. And I'm pretty easy to find as well on Twitter or Instagram. Always happy to connect with people who want to learn more about what we're building or who are building exciting things in the health and wellness space. I'd love to learn about that and see if there are any ways in which our brands can partner to reach all of our audiences.
Well, thanks again so much for joining me on The Voice of Retail, Alexandra. I wish you much success, and at one point, perhaps we'll even get to meet in person down the road at one of these conferences. But until then, stay safe for you, your family, and yours, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Same to you.
Well, thanks to Diana, Amanda, and Alexandra for being my guests, and thanks to Kronos for the support on this episode. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of Emmy LeBlanc Company, Inc. You can learn more about me on www.emmyleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a safe week.